Hi everyone, if you're tuning in, this is 6 foundational skills for a project-based learning classroom. I'm Ruth Ann Lane of Learning Lane, and today I'm going to talk with you about 6 foundational skills for project-based learning. A little bit about me first is I am a PBL certified teacher with 6 years in a PBL classroom and 8 years total. I'm really excited to talk with you today about these skills. If you are on the Elementary Project-Based Learning group page, there is an image that I shared with you that my friend actually made with all 6 of the foundational skills that I'm going to be talking with you about today, and that is a custom picture, so feel free to share it, use it as much as you want, but the things that I'm going to talk with you today are skills that you kind of need to lay the groundwork for a successful classroom throughout the year. If you are tuning in today, I always do a survey Monday over things that you would like for me to do a Facebook Live over, so as I'm kind of talking, you are welcome to comment with questions, your location, or ideas that you would like to see a Facebook Live over. But I'm going to go ahead and dive right in today. So the six foundational skills that I'm going to talk to you about. The first one that I think is crucial to any successful PBL classroom is a sense of wonder and inquiry inside of a classroom. So what do I mean by that? In a PBL classroom, it is extremely important that your students feel free to inquire and ask questions and really wonder about what the world is like, and that you do that too, that they see you modeling what it's like to wonder about the room and the world. So for example, my students, we had a very high population from India in our classroom, and we were learning about Diwali during the week of Diwali, and we were studying all about India, and I learned so much about the culture, and I really wanted to make sure that my students saw me learning that. So asking questions of some of my students, and as I'm reading, going, wow, there's over 700 languages spoken in India? That's crazy. Different things like that, because then they get to see that you're excited about learning and that you're excited about that sense of wonder too. A couple tools that I would suggest for that. So if you turned into my last Facebook Live, I talked about 5 books that are really helpful for teaching these foundational skills. I really suggest watching that because I give you a lot of really great tools. One of the books that I mentioned is this one, I Wonder. I really suggest this for developing that sense of wonder in your classroom. It's a great first read, but if you are K to 6, there's a great tool. It's called Picture Perfect Science. I don't know if you've ever used it before or not. If so, give a like. I would love to see how many people have used this, and it is a great tool for developing a sense of inquiry. They have a bunch of picture books recommended in this that you can read with your students, and it covers a lot of the NGSS science standards. So I really would recommend using this to kind of get into science with your kids, because it's really helpful. Another thing that I think really helps to develop that sense of wonder and inquiry are wordless picture books. I don't know if you've ever used a wordless picture book. This is one of my favorite ones. And when you use a wordless picture book, it kind of helps the students to wonder, well, what would the author have said here? And helping them to kind of develop a sense of what the words could have been. Also, just going outside. Just take your kids outside and walk them around. What do you see? What do you wonder about? What are some things out here that, maybe you've never seen before? Let's talk about it. Exciting videos. I highly recommend Mystery Dog. Those are great for developing a sense of inquiry in your classroom. The website Mystery Dog. You should Google it. So that's the first foundational skill. My second foundational skill is a sense of empathy. Now, empathy is something that's really hard to teach kids today, because a lot of times they haven't been taught it. So it's one of the things that we have as teachers have had to kind of take in on the classroom. Why is empathy important in a PBL classroom? Well, because if your students don't have a sense of empathy, they don't look at problems the same way, at human beings the same way. And when you are reading them an article that you want them to gain something from and help the people within the article, want to help the people in the article, if they don't have a sense of empathy, they're not going to do that. So I think that's a really important skill, because a lot of times then our entry events aren't as successful if we haven't cultivated that sense of empathy with our students. Some tools for empathy. Older students' picture books. This one is a really great one. It's called Little Woman Warrior Who Came Home. I highly recommend only reading this if you're teaching 5th or 6th grade, because it does talk about puberty, but it is a really great piece of historical fiction that talks about a little girl on the Trail of Tears. I think that sometimes the things that bring out empathy the most in our students are things that are real, things that they take them aback, like, oh, that really happened to people? Yes, it really happened, and it was awful. So here is an example of a really good book for that. A book for older kids and your primary. It's called The Deliverance of Dancing Bears. This is a wonderful book. I think sometimes empathy is easier to teach to younger children when it's through animals, because younger children tend to gravitate towards animals anyway, and this book does a really great job of that. It's about a bear who is kept by a man, and he's made to dance by whipping, and you really develop a sense of, oh, for this bear, like your heart aches for him. So I really think that this is a great book, because one of the characters also helps to save the bear, and so it shows how empathy can sometimes motivate us to action, and I think that's really powerful in a PBL classroom especially. So empathy. Skill 3, problem solving and critical thinking. There is a reason why the DOK levels, level 4, is so prevalent in PBL work. It's because PBL really motivates our kids to really be thinking critically. And if we haven't cultivated those skills in our kiddos, then they're not going to have as much success in our classroom. So I really recommend doing anything that you can to get your kids problem solving and thinking critically, even if it's just showing them like a slideshow of different problems and having them brainstorming ideas. It doesn't have to be critical thinking questions or high DOK questions in your reading. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, your 4th skill, teamwork and conflict resolution. Guys, if there's nothing else you take from me today, teamwork and conflict resolution skills are crucial in a project-based learning elementary classroom. Your kids do not just walk in the door. You know this. Your kids don't just walk in the door with strong teamwork skills and the ability to resolve their own conflicts. So we as educators have to take that on, whether it's using group contracts, which is a really great skill to have, or it's using more protocols in the classroom to teach kids how to interact with one another, or it's teaching a good way to apologize. Simply saying I'm sorry is not enough. You have to be able to apologize and say, what can I do to make that better? If you are in the primary grades, there's a lot of great, I know it sounds really corny, but there's a lot of really great Daniel Tiger episodes that really help. In fact, saying I'm sorry is the first step, then how can I help is actually a song from Daniel Tiger, and I really think it helps kids learn how to apologize properly. A great way to teach teamwork throughout all of the grades is Save Fred. I love that activity. I know that it's probably been used a lot, but I do it every year, and I did it with my 1st graders and I did it with my 5th graders because it really requires kids to come at a problem together. So what I usually do with Save Fred is I teach conflict resolution skills beforehand, and then it is the first team building activity that I do, because I really think that if you teach the conflict resolution skills before, and then you give them a way to practice, they're going to have implemented those skills right off the bat. They know right where to go in the classroom to find that conflict resolution poster, which brings me to another thing that I really think every successful PBL classroom should do. Find conflict resolution strategies that work for you, that you understand, and use them to teach your kids. Make sure that they're things that will work for your kids too, but whether it's teaching them to play paper, rock, scissors, or to vote, or if you have straws somewhere in your classroom, teach them where these tools are so that they can do it without you, and that they can resolve those conflicts. What are the steps that they have to go through before they bring a problem to you? Do they need to refer to their group contract a certain number of times? Do they need to play paper, rock, scissors and then vote if they're still not happy? What do they do to resolve that conflict? Because it's going to happen. No matter how strongly you build your community, conflict happens because they're doing things and up and working together in groups all the time in a PBL room. And that's what makes it so great, but it also is something that can sometimes breed conflict. Also talking with students about what to do when they are not the ones who win the vote or win your paper, rock, scissors. How do they deal with those emotions? That's something that has to be addressed for them to be successful too. Again, that Daniel Tiger episode is really, really good for that. I know it's kind of hokey, but if you teach a primary grade, it's really helpful. Okay, number 5, flexibility. Now, flexibility in teaching is something that we all know is really important. I mean, how many of you have ever been there where you're in the middle of a lesson and then, oh, surprise convo? So we all know about flexibility, but flexibility in project-based learning is so important. One of the reasons why I think this is because a lot of times when we are doing an authentic PBL, our PBL goes someplace completely different than the way that we planned it. For example, my teaching partner and I, we were so passionate about a project that we were going to launch to our kids. We did all of this research into water bottles and providing clean water and how exciting it was. I read a great book about clean water to my kiddos, and then we read some articles and we watched a video about kids drinking dirty water, and then it came time to vote for our project, and we were so excited, and we knew kids were going to vote for it because one of them had mentioned it, and pets won. We had this great unit all planned out for pets, or for water, and we were going to do something for the Humane Society instead. So I think that flexibility is really important for us as facilitators. But even more importantly than that is flexibility of students. It is so important that students understand that if we have to abandon a project because, well, maybe our gardening project got rained out and we weren't able to plant this season and none of our produce grew, letting them know that things like that happen in life. This PBL is a real life thing. This is why when people talk about the difference between a project and a PBL, in a project the teacher structures everything out and the kids follow those steps step by step to get to an end result, whether the student kind of gets to make choices or not in that. But a PBL is an authentic opportunity for students to experience mistakes and failures. And this, I think, is so powerful. And that's why I think flexibility is so important, and teaching kids how to deal with things like that, teaching them that elasticity. Because the truth is, in real life, when they're working on a project in their jobs, you know, they may have to say, oh, well, this didn't work out this time, so what am I going to do to make it better? You know, I can't go down this path now. What am I going to do? And as a PBL teacher, it's our job to teach them how to do that. All right, my final one, my final and 6th foundational skill is a strong growth mindset. Now, growth mindset is so big right now. It's one of those buzzwords in education, and we all know what happens with buzzwords. You know, they get latched onto, and then they get changed so much and people aren't really doing them fully because, you know, we have a million things on our plates and someone comes in and says, hey, you need to do growth mindset. And you're like, okay, I'm going to print off some posters and there's my growth mindset. But the truth is growth mindset is so PBL. You know, I was at a meeting for TPT teachers, and one of them was talking about how she'd listened to a speaker discuss how growth mindset is really failing a lot of our kids right now because, you know, we talk to them about the power of yet. But when does yet happen? And I kept thinking to myself, that is so PBL. Yet happens within a project. That's why we do knows and needs to knows. We don't know this yet, but we're going to, and here are the tools that we're going to use to get there. So I think growth mindset and PBL are a perfect marriage. Some resources and tools for that. I love the book The Girl Who Never Made Mistakes. If you haven't read this, I highly recommend reading it with your students. It talks about a girl who doesn't ever make mistakes and what it's like for her to learn. And then she has a brother who makes tons of mistakes. And then one day, she almost makes a mistake. And so it's about how she learns the importance of mistakes. And I think that growth mindset is really important when tackling a project with students. So I hope that this was a helpful video. I try to make them really short because we all have a million things in our lives and you don't need to listen to me get all long-winded. So those are my 6 foundational skills. I hope that kind of was helpful. Again, I made a Facebook Live 2 weeks ago about 5 books that really helps to support foundational skills, so I highly recommend you watch that. There's a link in it to a free handout that has resources and things too. Again, I put up a survey every Monday of different topics to do a Facebook Live over. If you have a suggestion for a topic, just shoot it on the elementary project-based learning page, or you can comment below with it. If you have any project-based learning questions, feel free to post them down in the comments section. I would love to talk with you about them. If there's anybody who has a question now, I would be happy to talk about that with you too. But there are 3 resources that I forgot to talk to you about, so I'm going to talk to you about that really quickly in case there's anybody that has a question. When I was talking about teamwork, I wanted to also mention, you know, classroom building and how important that is. And there is a book that I actually got at Kohl's for $5, and I read it with my daughter, and I just love it. If you've ever read After the Fall, I think this is a great book for growth mindset as well as developing a really great culture in your classroom. Go ahead and give it a read if you haven't, because it's fantastic, and I love what happens at the end of this book. I think it's really cool, and it talks to how, you know, when we overcome our fears, we can all, you know, kind of spread our wings, and having a fear of failing and making mistakes is something that a lot of kids have coming to us in a PBL classroom. Okay, well, that's all for me tonight. I'm gonna go tuck in my twins. I will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you for tuning in.